Hi, everyone, and welcome to Living a Legacy. And I'm excited to welcome to the program Eric Couch. Eric, how are you? And I'm excited because I'm a fan of this quarterback, and it's not a Steeler, but the surprising thing is I followed that team all the way through when I was a freshman at Western Maryland College. I remember going to the Super Bowl party and rooting on the Redskins, which we can't say anymore. So we have to call it the Washington football team. And
Correct.
our guest is saying that because it was interesting. I did an article for a podcast magazine sports category with another Washington football team, but let's go ahead and introduce our guest, Eric.
So today we have Super Bowl XXVI MVP winner and quarterback of the Washington Redskins, Mark Rypien. And even more so, we're going to talk about something that hits really, really close to home with me. And that is traumatic brain injury of just having concussions as a player. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Eric and Neil, thank you guys for having me on the show too, promoting our documentary, which is amazing, and really appreciate Jerry Scher and her crew of what they did, and all the cast, especially Andrew Marr, who's, all of us became vulnerable in this, but for a good reason. And that's to help everyone and anyone that is dealing with a TBI, depression, anything that they're dealing with now, especially after COVID-19 came around. And so I really appreciate you guys promoting this and give us an opportunity to speak on behalf of this.
Absolutely. Mark, I want to get into traumatic brain injury and what that is, because my dad had that. So, he passed away in 2018 of Alzheimer's, but a lot of that was due to the concussions. He played middle linebacker at SMU, same time as Dandy Don Meredith was the quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And actually walked on in spring training with the Dallas Cowboys. So Neil had asked about Cowboys a minute ago. But Dad was also a baseball player, and that's actually where he always got hurt, was in baseball as a catcher. And my dad played college football. I assumed I wouldn't, and that wasn't in the cards. I ended up getting seen all the way through. But this topic is huge, from having friends that have had concussions, but having a father that we were caregiver for almost 4 years. Huge topic. And, in fact, before we go into some of your history, why don't you just give us a brief synopsis of what this is, the traumatic brain injury?
Well, Quite Explosions. Quite Explosions, a documentary, deals with about 8 of us, some celebrities, some basically mostly civilians that have had some traumatic brain injury and have dealt with either depression, suicidal ideology, all the likes because of these events. And the documentary is more or less to say there is hope. We don't have to stay broken. There's great doctors out there, and this documentary will be hearing from Dr. Mark Gordon, who's a hormonal therapist that through a very, very elaborate blood test will find out their deficiencies that you have, and will treat you naturally versus giving you a bag of, here, take this because you're depressed, take this because you're in pain, take this because of that.
Yeah.
So he's one of the featured guys, featured doctors in here. Dr. Daniel Amen, who I'm going to, from Amen Clinics, who I'm going to meet with tomorrow night and have an opportunity to speak to him. He does a SPECT scan and kind of gives you an idea, and they do a very elaborate test on your brain and cognitive test on your brain to see where you're at psychologically. And Dr. Bob Sammons, who's a Harvard expert on a thing called transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, which a lot of people are using now. And it's a way to fire some of the neuronal pathways in your brain that maybe aren't really firing at this point in time. And then there's the Joe Namath is very, very pro advocate of what's called HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which you get to kind of depressurize your brain and have a chance to sit in a chamber, and really has been wonderful to our veterans, who, by the way, each and every one of them, when they come back from tour of duty, we need to make sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah.
And Art does an incredible job in this documentary, talks about his own path and his way of dealing with some of the things and the demons that he had to deal with. But it's very, very great. I think Jerry did an amazing job, and their staff did an amazing job, and we're very blessed for you guys, Eric and Neil, to give us the opportunity to talk on behalf of this. And I think that's one of the things that I feel very good and comfortable about talking, is we don't have to stay broken. There's ways, there's
Right.
methods out there. So thank you guys for that.
And
Sorry.
there's help, right? There's a community, so you're not alone. You're not stranded on an island, which is where this takes you, and you feel just completely isolated. And what's wrong, and why me? And you don't want to say anything because honestly, as a veteran of the military, as a professional athlete or collegiate athlete or whatever, you're the strong person, right? That's how you're viewed. I mean, that was my dad as well, right? He was always the big, strong guy who at 77 years old still doing push-ups every day. I mean, he was a beast.
Oh, wow.
And yet your mind is just telling you otherwise, and it's tearing you down from the inside out, and it's devastating. So yeah.
That's correct.
I want to get to that, Mark, but I wanted to say, I don't know how many concussions I had as a professional wrestler. I've been hit with trash cans, phones in the head, chairs, everything in between. I've lucked out in a lot of ways of going back to become a teacher. So it's great to hear that there are therapies still available to help repair the brain, because that's been out that once you have it, it's over. But your story is amazing. But how many concussions did you end up having playing in the NFL?
Well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the concussions. Of course, the concussions are a serious traumatic brain injury. It's a cumulative effect of some concussive hits, and not allowing your brain to heal. I think the NFL has done a good job, as collegiate football has, as the high school football has, is giving your brain a week to rest in between games, instead of going back in full gear, full pads, like back, Eric, when your dad played. I mean, I guarantee at SMU, they're full gear hitting every single day. And then much like your father, both my brothers were baseball catchers, played for the Canadian Olympic team and Canadian national team. And brother Tim played 5 years in Toronto Blue Jay organization as catchers. Now they're giving protection to the those that the vulnerable, that the receivers, the quarterbacks, and positions where you're defenseless. And as a catcher, you're also on an island there too, and you're defenseless. So there's ways now that there's ways now that the sport itself is changing its dynamics. The sport itself is changing its way of thinking to say, hey, how can we make this a little bit safer, a little bit better? And I think that's the one thing that people are looking at now and at least starting to evaluate. And then hopefully it gets to a point where we don't have all these history of these brain related injuries. And I also know that I'm working as myself and Dr. Jake Van Landingham in Tallahassee, Florida, and Brett Favre and Kurt Warner of a drug called Prevacus. And basically it's a nasal, you take it nasally and get it into the cell membranes, into your brain. Once you do have a concussive hit that actually alleviates some of the swelling in the brain. It's a steroid drug that alleviates some of the swelling in the brain. So long-term effects won't be so bad as some of us had when we were young. I mean, Neil, you just mentioned it, right?
I can utilize it. That's great, because I had Brett on my show talking about that, but it was not released yet. So Brett came on my show about 3 or 4 months ago, or maybe 5 months ago. With COVID, every day seems like the same day, so I can't really remember. But it scares me in so many ways of just how quickly it can happen with your father, Eric, especially. And then my brother now, after my father before he passed on, he started having dementia very end of life, and he was brilliant. Number 2 in the Naval Academy, MIT graduate, just brilliant man. And to see that happen, Eric, I know that you had to see that with your father too, which really was hurting and tough.
Yeah, it's devastating. And I think that's why the topic's so big, Neil and Mark. And Mark, that's why I love that you're championing this cause, right? You guys have made a documentary, but you're not just some, living a legacy is about how, celebrities and amazing people use their influence to impact the world, right? So you're not some schmo off the street that says, hey, this sounds like a great idea, but you've actually been in the trenches, and, you are a name that people recognize because you were the Super Bowl 26 MVP, right? You were the quarterback of the Washington Redskins, even though we're not supposed to call them that anymore, right? That
Washington football team.
Yeah, the Washington football team. But Mark, that's, so you actually, when you walk into a room and say this is a big deal, it's more clout than even some doctor that's got a PhD and an MD, because they're like, what do you know about this? Right? And your story. So let's, I know, because your story is not just that you support it, but that you've walked through it. So I would love for you to share a little with, our listeners of just, your story of how you got into, maybe of getting into football, and some favorite, stories of being in the NFL, but then also kind of why your connection to today's topic.
Well, first of all, the platform that we have and the opportunity we have as a celebrity, and I think Andrew Marr as our men and women in the service that served our country. Andrew has a lot of clout just from that standpoint, and respecting and honoring, and to the likes of your father and the memory of your father, the memory of all our service men and women. 20 to 23 of our service men and women will commit suicide today. And if we can use our platform, if we can help in some way, shape, or form to save one of them, we've done ourselves a service, and we need to do our service to all those. And especially with COVID this year, we're going to have a lot more mental health issues to have to deal with than we have before. And unfortunately, the government, one of the things they cut first is dollars that go to mental health treatment. So if we can get this out there and show that there's other venues, other avenues to get involved with and help you through your process, I think that's incredible, because I've been through the best of best, hoisting a Lombardi trophy and celebrating and cheering, to the worst of worst, losing a son at the age of 3 to a brain tumor, to where I spiraled downhill to not necessarily addiction into sexual addiction versus alcohol and drugs. My addiction got me in such a bad place in my life, that I wanted to make sure that my vulnerability and to tell people that, hey, I thought about checking out. I tried it once, and fortunately, I failed, and thank goodness I did, because now I can be a platform and a champion for someone that's been to the rock bottom, been all the way to the worst, the darkest hole that I've ever been in my life, and to rise up about that and help others out, and tell them that there is help on the way, and there's ways that they can get help and be treated and feel good about themselves. And I'm saying treated in a way, not with opioids and painkillers and drugs that you've been diagnosed with depression, or doctor's going to give you some drugs to get you out the door. We're talking about natural causes, like Dr. Gordon talks about in this documentary. We're talking about Dr. Amen and the SPECT scans and the psychiatric psychology behind what you're dealing with, how you're dealing with it. And they're understanding the education that you can, as an individual, to understand what you're going through and say, hey, it's not just you. There's a lot of us out there.
Right.
There's a lot of us out there that are having issues and going through issues. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, to the TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, to all these different platforms and all these different modalities that can help treat what you're dealing with, and that you're not alone. You're in the majority of people that are struggling with depression, struggling with suicide ideology, struggling with your own brain health through a traumatic brain injury, to post-concussive hits, to CTE. Unfortunately with CTE, it's only diagnosed after you're not here anymore. And that's we want to get all these modalities out there, these treatments out there, so that people will become more cognitive aware, get help, so that they don't have to deal with the latter stages of their life as your father did and others have. Right. And I just believe wholeheartedly in this. I'm working with one of the leading experts in the world, Dr. Heidi Hanna, who's stress, probably the one of the greatest neuroscientists and stress doctors, and they're using quiet explosions in their class teachings at Harvard University. So this is going to be, I think, definitely an opening, an opportunity, and a chance to people to get help.
Mark, now when I think about this, and I'm just like, blown away, what symptoms did you have that led to that spiral? Because people need to definitely see the documentary to see truly the spiral you went through and the challenges. I mean, if you read the bio on it, and everyone needs to check that out, and that'll be available in the show notes. You went through really, but when did it start? When did it kind of give people ideas of symptoms that are athletes that they start to see it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you look at is, for me, through maybe predominantly my whole life, living up in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people have what they call SAD, seasonal affective disorder, where come October, you got from the fall, when the fall starts to the end of winter, where you're not seeing the sun a lot, you're not getting some of the stimulation that you need, and so you become very depressed and very down. And then you add to that, my playing football, that's another one. The death of your child, that's not supposed to happen in our life.
Right.
The passing of my mom, and so certain things that can create these triggers, you might say, that can spiral you down a rabbit hole that you can't come back from. And so I think it's not necessarily I had headaches or anything of that nature. It was just a time where your body, your chemistry, your body. And I think the other thing is too, is your body, when you look at brain health and you look at feeding your brain the right things, when you get to a point where, I'm probably 40 pounds heavier when I played, that's inflammation throughout your body. So when you add depression into that, and you had all these other triggers or all these other things that create an environment that is not good, you can see how it, you can get a little lost and not know where to go. So that's predominantly what I deal with, is my body needs, my brain needs, and is a healthier environment for me to be in. And these modalities that I'm telling you about, I haven't tried the HBOT, but Jim McMahon, a good friend of mine, has used hyperbaric oxygen therapy in his treatment. A lot of the guys in the documentary, one was a surfer who had a traumatic brain injury surfing. Another one's they have survivor guilt, Sebi, who's a New York firefighter who lost almost his whole platoon to 9/11.
Yeah.
And so these are ways that they're going to get it. I'm going to try hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I'm going to also try Dr. Gordon's hormonal therapy to see if what am I deficient of? What do I need? What does my body naturally need? Not necessarily through drugs, but what does my body naturally need? And then go about doing that and see if that helps. And I think when you look at this documentary, you're going to find out that those that have used these methods are doing incredible, especially our servicemen and women that we got to take care of.
So there are obvious situations, like you mentioned, of just the major impact of losing platoon in 9/11 as a fireman, or losing your child, which nobody should ever, right? I mean, that's so there's major traumas like that. If you're talking to a spouse or children of someone that's done this, is there certain things that you would tell them, look out for these signs? Is there any kind of telltale signs other than just they're just depressed, they're putting on weight? Is it kind of the same signs of depression?
Yeah, that's good point. There's irritability. There's being somebody that shuts down. I mean, as someone that has been to the enjoys being around people, you stop wanting to be, isolate yourself, and it's almost like you've kind of created this own little bubble that you're in, and it's not who you are, and it's so I think all spouses and family members can see certain I know we're looking at doing an app, and we're still trying to look at doing an app. It's called Got Your Six or something to that extent, basically what it comes from is that having a core and a group of people that know that, hey, they see something. Yeah. They understand that there's something's not right. And they can say, hey, how are you doing? Reach out to you. Maybe let's you and I go to the gym together, because a lot of times what you do is when you're not feeling good and you wake up that morning and say, yeah, I know I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do that. Next thing you know, you're not doing any of that. Then you're spiraling down that rabbit hole again. That's not gonna end well.
So Eric, one of the things I make a mistake is, I know is from, too many shots to the head, is I don't remember people's names. That's it. I mean, everything else, I can tell you stories and remember everything, But then when people's names come, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so I understand what, thank goodness, a lot of things I don't go through. I have like almost not a photographic memory, Mark, but I can remember every conversation I have, but I can't remember the person's name. It's the weirdest thing in the
Wow.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember every conversation I have with anybody, be able to retell that conversation, say, I remember telling that. But then and then if I go on stage, like when I go on Clubhouse, which is a new platform, and they say, who have you interviewed? It's hard for me to list 10 to 12 people who I've interviewed that are celebrities. It's very strange. And Eric's caught me at times. Like, remember when I interviewed that person, Neil? I know exactly that person. I can't find it. So Eric, those are the kind of things that happen due to this. And I'm fearful. And that's why I'm so glad Mark is doing this great work. So go ahead, Eric. And don't
and
you
then
agree?
Mark,
That's
what
fantastic.
Yeah, Mark, okay, so you recognize the symptoms. What are some things that steps that people can do if they're seeing that, hey, I'm experiencing this, or that could be me, right? Raising your hand is the first step. But then also, if you're a family member, if you're someone who loves, someone that's been in the military, that's been an athlete, or been, whatever, that's had a traumatic event, like where are some places that they can get help?
Well, I think watching the documentary, you'll find there's, we all have a psychologist or psychiatrists, that try to guide you and give you, and I think they're very valuable. Obviously, they're very valuable.
Absolutely.
For many reasons. There's, you're a lot of people have groups, whether it be church groups or support groups, and I think those are awesome. And then I think there's these other modalities I'm telling you about, is the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Try that. See if that might be I know in Israel, that is one of the biggest, especially with COVID and what's going on. One of the biggest industries now is HBOT. And anyone look at HBOT, you can find places in your state, in your city that might have these, and see if your insurance covers them, and see if you can get this therapy. And I think would be great. A lot of insurance companies don't cover TMS, but what does happen is after all, they exhaust yourself with all these drugs to deal with depression, and everything like that, and you're still not getting anything from that. They will cover TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation, which I think should be in every VA hospital across the world, or hospital across the US. They should have TMS treatments for all our vets, so that they can find out what is, like Andrew, you look at Andrew. Andrew was the head of the bomb squad in Afghanistan. He had to deal with the frontline explosions, TBIs.
Oh my goodness.
Watching some of his comrades, not come home with him, putting their caskets on a plane to head back to their loved ones. And those are things that's not natural. These are not natural things, And so when that happens and your brain starts going there, and then you go and see a doctor or a psychiatrist, and they prescribe you a drug or an opioid or something to try to calm you down, and you find out that next thing you know, you got 15 different drugs in a bag. And when you see his documentary, he says, I took this bag of drugs and I threw it into the garbage, and I got some natural hormonal treatment because I was deficient in these certain areas. And that was what saved his life. Basically saved his life.
Wow. See, I love to know there's treatment, because I remember, Dr. Amalu and what you remember the name?
Concussion.
Concussion. And I'm hoping that there are treatments, and it's great that things that are coming out. And Mark, I think you seem so with it, meaning like nothing that shows me that you have any traumatic brain injury at all. The way you're talking, and you're very blessed to see the recovery, and I'm glad to see that. And I hope that I want to provide more than just this interview, Mark. So I'll stay in touch with you.
I'll also say one other thing in closing too, is that I have taken another cognitive test, and my cognitive scores are out the roof. There's certain areas, certain things that I'd have to, that are I wouldn't say problematic, but are a concern that I need to have. But my cognitive skills for, playing a sport that's pretty, not normal, to play professional football, but it's, and get banged around quite a bit. My cognitive scores are very good and very high. And I just took this test recently again, and it just shows the improvement that I have with the TMS treatment that I've had, and just being around. And also there's a place where your heart and your soul and your body chemistry works on the fact that we don't have to stay broken. You know, we are broken, yes, but we don't have to stay broken. And there's ways that we can all feel that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we can get there as we work collectively or individually and then collectively as a group. And for you guys to help those that are in need, anyone with it could be just a one-time incident that could create this spiral effect. It's not necessarily a cumulative effect, but it could be one car accident. It could be one slip and fall and hit your head on the ice, you know, as you have in Pittsburgh there. You guys see ice there about every other month, you know, in this time of the year. And so there is help out there. I just want people to know that. Thank you guys for sharing.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, and I love your point about, you know, there is help, right? And I love the fact that, there's, you know, watch the documentary, see that there are, you know, experts, and there's people from all walks of life, doctors and psychiatrists and professional athletes and military, and, you know, all these different areas are coming to this one focus of trying to bring some solutions. And I love that. But also, Mark, I love the fact that you brought it down and that you included, hey, you know what, don't discount that local church, don't local psychologist, counselor, right? Because they're right there, right? We need to have that, you know, we want to have that global, hey, there's people working on a much bigger scale, but there's someone that's right there for me, right? And that's where these local groups are absolutely critical. So thank you for bringing that to, you know, and continuing to discuss it. And then with that, as about at the beginning, right? Our show is about using your influence to impact the world. And a question we like to ask everybody is, you know, you're using your influence today by bringing this documentary and speaking out, but when you're gone, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy, one is the ability to take something that is not natural, losing a child, honoring my son Andrew, and helping others in the pediatric oncology arena, and making the lives better of children and the families of children that are going through cancer a little bit more palatable, a little bit more easier. That's the legacy I'd like to do locally. I'd love to do it globally, but we can start locally and be able to do that globally. I'd like to say that coming out and being vulnerable and spilling not everything that I went through, but a lot of what I went through, and to know that I was broken. I still am broken, but I am getting the help that I need, and I'm not going to ever stop until we can share with the world our experience and to help others get through their downfalls, their TBIs, their depression, their PTSD, and all the things that create some very, very challenging times in one's life.
Wow, that's just amazing. And where can we watch the documentary? Where's the best place, Mark, to watch the documentary?
I think you can get it on Amazon is the best place. I think you can purchase it. I don't know if it's on Netflix yet, but it's called Quiet Explosions. And you know, Joe Rogan had Dr. Gordon and Andrew Marr on there, and Joe Rogan loved the man for making sure that our men and women that come back, that are serving now, that have served, and that will continue to serve, are always taken care of. Joe does an incredible job, and to have Andrew on there and talk about his being vulnerable and exposing his whole life, and then having Mark Gordon be able to help in guiding these people in whatever way they can.
All right. Well, fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Mark, for stopping by. And guys, again, Eric, what another great guest. I mean, another legacy guest for sure. What he's doing.
Absolutely. Mark, thanks for joining us. This was great. Absolutely
Thanks,
enjoyed having you today.
Appreciate it. And Neil, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mark. Okay. And we'll say hail to the Washington football team instead of I had to say that. I had to. Again, a huge fan.
It doesn't really flow, does it?
No, it doesn't. We have to come up with hopefully they come up with a new name soon. But good talking to you, Mark.
Thanks.
All right, guys, that was Living the Legacy.